Warm welcome to committee and to those watching on the. Oh, there you go. I banged it. Warm welcome to the committee on the 29th of July in the Simonton building. This is the Audit and Standards Committee, and the meeting will be recorded and live streamed. Hopefully, there'll be some attendance. If you can just make sure when you speak, check your microphone is working, and only two microphones, myself and one other, can be on at the same time. Mobile phones, members, could you put them to silent or switch them off, please? Fire exits are to my right and through the double doors. Okay, seems like a long way to get there. And the meeting point is at the top end of Mill Hill Car Park. As there are one new member here, it might be worth some introduction. So could I start with the officers from my left?
Clive Mason, Director of Resources in Section 151.
Sarah Hamilton, Democratic Services Officer.
Sean Brosser, Head of Financial Services.
Helen Lillington, Director for Grant Thornton.
Paul, Councillor?
I'm Leah Mickleborough. I am Head of Democratic Services, Elections and Monitoring Officer.
Hi, Rachel Ashley Corn, Chief Internal Auditor.
Councillor James?
Councillor Peter James, Little Bowden Ward, Market Harbour.
Councillor Bateman, Misterton Ward.
It's on.
Bill Piper from Lutterworth East, the ward, not the development.
Slip of the tongue.
Rose Foreman, Welland Ward.
Thank you all. Yeah, Liz, done. Just to note, members, there's one item that I'm aware of to be considered under any urgent business. The exempt minutes from the previous meeting of the committee. If the committee wishes to discuss these, they will need to go into exempt session at that point. Or, if not, I propose that these be considered without discussion under item 3 along with the public minutes. Are members in agreement with that? Councillor Bateman?
No, I'm perfectly happy with that, Chair.
Thank you. I have some apologies for absence. I've received from Councillor Finnan and Councillor Howick, and also Councillor Knowles is substituted by Councillor James. Declaration of members' interests. Are there any declarations on the items in the agenda to be declared by any member? No. Draft minutes under 3 of the Audit and Standards Committee, 29th of April 2026, and exempt minutes, but as I said, you've also all agreed to take this under 3 without reading discussing those. Any comments on the minutes? Councillor Bateman?
No comments, Chair. Just happy to move those as an accurate record.
Thank you. Anyone second that? Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Sign those. The first report is under 4, the accounts and audit update. The report will be introduced by Sean, Head of Financial Services, and supported by Helen Lillington, our External Auditor. Just to note, members, the recommendation for this paper is that the committee considers and comments as necessary on the publication of the 25-26 Annual Financial Report and the completion of the Accounts Recovery Programme, noting that the management assessment of the completion of actions remains subject to audit testing and opinion. That will be expanded upon, I'm sure, by Auditor and Sean. Over to Sean.
Thank you, Chair. The So this report goes through probably a little bit of the history that we've gone through since I started in March 25, and so I came in at the point when we were just commencing the accounts recovery program, and I think the state of the accounts at that point was such that we received the disclaimed opinion following the end of the audit for 24-25. In that time, we've put a tremendous amount of effort and some resources into the building back of the accounts processes, the financial system, making sure that we have everything in place to get to the point that we have now, which is to publish the 25-26 statement of accounts on time, and subsequently on the 17th of July, which was the deadline that we were hoping to have for the completion of the 25-26 bank reconciliation, we were able to do that and have all of the historic bank reconciliations completed as we were expected, under the level to reconciling to within the triviality limit set by Grant Thornton, which is 40,000. So the overall amount is just over 21,000, which is still a little higher than we'd like, but it's within a tolerance that we think we can, that we're happy to base the accounts upon. The publication of this means that effectively the publication of this in time and the completion of the bank reconciliation means that was the last main task of the accounts recovery programme as was set out in the previous Audit and Standards Committee papers, and the next actions are to try and move that on to business as usual and making sure that in 26-27 we are completely up to date and that we can give you at a point in time we can give you the last month's bank reconciliation to make sure that we are no longer in this position. The idea is to have that as automated as we can within the financial system, with regular confirmation that that is the reconciled position, so that we can rely on it as a control to back up our cash position and our reserves position as a council. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Piper?
It's not actually a question, it's a comment. And looking at the chart at the top of page 13, it seems to me as if somebody has done a hell of a lot of hard work this year.
Thank you, Councillor Piper, and for the recognition of that. Councillor James?
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me, I remember a while ago that one of the issues for us was the valuing the assets of the council. I missed it. I didn't see a reference in here. But do we know the net position of assets? Because some of our assets, of course, will go down in value. Some would probably presumably appreciate in value. But do we know the net effect now that we've evaluated the assets of the council?
Sean?
The net position was part of the published statements of accounts, and the auditors will give their opinion on whether we've put those revaluations in correctly. We believe we have.
Okay, thank you. Just one other part question. The vehicle fleet, we're going for tendering soon, and the vehicle fleet we own, I believe. And they are declared as assets, presumably, as a part of the organisation, and they will be written off, presumably, over a period of time. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, yes. So they've been recognised within the accounts that were published, and they are amortised over the useful life of those vehicles. So effectively, we account for them in revenue terms over the life. So we
write them down each year.
Yeah, we write them down.
Can I ask what the life is of, say, a refuse freighter within a contract? How many years do we write those down over?
I have to check that with you. I think the standard is 5 or 7, but I will check and come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments or? No? Just to ask Helen, do you want to make any comment here or wait for the next paper?
Through you, Chair, I suppose the only comment I would have to make at this point is, yes, I can confirm that the financial statements were published in line with the timeline. We have done this is the second week of our visit, which was programmed, so it's very early days in the process yet. So until we've completed further work, I can't really give you any assurances on the quality of those accounts, but I can confirm the publication of them.
This is 25, 26.
26, yeah.
Thank you. No other comments? Well, this paper's to note and it's duly noted. Thank you, Sean. The next paper is number 5, Regaining Assurance External Audit Report. The covering report to be introduced by the Head of Financial Services, Sean again, and the Regaining Assurance Report to be introduced by Helen from Grant Thornton. The recommendations for members to consider are that the committee considers and comments upon on the Regaining Assurance Report in Appendix 1, noting that the current consideration of the external auditors that the Council is provisionally within the Category D assessment, with an assumption of disclaimed audit opinion through to 2728. And little 2, on the capacity assessment Appendix 2 to be submitted to the MHCLG, just to say that the MHCLG is driving this current process of auditing where we find ourselves in Category D, but many other councils are in the same position. And approves the Chair of Audit and Standards Committee to sign on behalf of the Council. Thank you. Sign. Over to you, Sean.
Through you, Chair. The Regaining Assurance Strategy document, I think the key part to this is the outcome of it and the recommendations from it are fair based on the period in which they're being judged. So they're being judged based on the 24-25 outcomes from the audit, and the audit opinion on that basis was that we did still have some gaps in our assurance, and so any of the work that we've just considered in the previous report is effectively not considered as part of this. So in a sense, I don't think they could have come to any other conclusion than what they've come to, based on the period that they're judging us on. I think we are in a better position than the Category D would suggest, but at the moment, this is the opinion of the auditors based on the best knowledge available to them. And happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions at this point? Councillor James? Microphone? Unless it's not working.
God, sorry. Apologies, everyone. Are we comfortable that the financial system is working satisfactorily now? Because this is one of the factors that we were concerned about. So are we comfortable it's fully bedded in? That's one question, please. And I suppose related to it, that we have the right resources now in the department to manage properly.
Thank you. I think Sean can give you assurance.
Yes, through you, I'm happy to. I think the way that we've been working with the financial system over the last year, I think similar to how we've been working with the auditors, I think both relationships have significantly improved over that time, and I think the way that we've been working with both has suggested that I think we have a system that is reasonable for us to be putting our assurance in, and yeah, I think the resources that we have now that we've completed a lot of the critical work, so the things like the bank reconciliation, we're hoping to be able to use the staff who've spent a great deal of time on that since they've come in. We had probably 4 full-time staff working on it for quite a lot of the last 6 to 8 months, and I think the ability to go and use them on some of the things that they were brought in to do, rather than just bank reconciliation, will hopefully see a lot more efficiencies coming out of what we're doing in the next year or so.
Thank you, Chairman.
Because in this meeting, we tend to be looking back a year or so, but the monitoring of this, I would go through internal audit. Is that correct, Rachel? Or
So through you, Chair, we would generally not follow up on the actions from external audit. We would, that would be subject to a separate process. I don't know if
okay.
the officers can comment on.
Just wanted to have some assurance for the committee that the monitoring of this would go through external audit or through the financial team.
So, Chair, the outcome of this is a successful 25-26 audit. So almost by default, if you have put all those actions in place that you have said you are going to do, then you will have a successful outcome on the 25-26 audit. So that's effectively the monitoring of it. It's about the output, and we're currently not in a position to tell you what that is at the moment.
Again, for members, would the output of that be November this year or a bit later?
It needs to be November.
Okay, thank you. Yes, right.
Through you, Chair. I'd just like to manage expectations a little bit though. So members will recall from earlier this year, external audit gave a synopsis of if everything's okay where we actually end up this year. So their audit of this year is 25-26 in-year transactions only. Okay. The idea being that will build a foundation that we can take, and when I say we, it's the global we, as in Harbour District Council, can take some reassurance that we can account for our income and account for our expenditure, and we can do all the accounting adjustments that need to be done to produce a set of accounts in the right way. Okay. What the external auditors will not be able to give assurance on come November are the balances brought forward. Okay, so all those numbers on the left-hand side of the statement of accounts, effectively, they can't do that because, as it says in the report, they don't have the resource to do that build back, which is called build back work during their normal audit. Now, if things had been normal and we had done it, they would have done, because they would have confirmed it last year, and the story carries on. That build back work will happen November, December onwards at that point. And discussions with the external are yet to happen on when that's supposed to happen. And that will be a process, and I'm sure Helen will jump in if I'm telling something wrong, based on risk.
Waiting.
And yeah, always waited to beat me up if I say the wrong thing. But there we go, it's life. And based on risk and the impact overall on materiality of the accounts. I'm sure Grant Thornton have a process agreed with said government departments and respective clients on how that build back will work. So you must expect in November, when the audit opinion comes, touch wood, Clive's touching his head on the table, that all being equal, if Helen finds and her team find that the audit has gone well, she'll say we've verified the 25-26 transactions, but you will remain disclaimed for 25-26 because they haven't been able to do the build back work for the prior year balances. So it's all part of expectation management here. I wouldn't want any member to come in November thinking, oh, brilliant, that's great, we're now not qualified. Okay, you still will be disclaimed until that build back work is done. Is that fair? Is that understood by everybody?
Yeah.
Has anybody got any questions on that?
Councillor James?
Yeah. So a question to Clive. So effectively, we'll run another year and hopefully so we're looking 27, the 27, 28, we'll all be in balance. Is that where we're heading to?
Okay, so Helen and her team are now, are now auditing 25, 26. And this is where it gets really confusing about financial years, because we're looking backwards and forwards all at the same time.
Yeah.
She's now auditing 25, 26. The 25, 26 accounts will be displayed. At some point in hopefully the future, she will do the build back work. And if she finds it's fine, and assume that she finds it's all fine and we've done all the correct things, when she comes to do the audit for 26, 27, she'll be able to say, well, I've confirmed the balance is brought forward and we may start getting out of that position. But having been through this with a couple of other local authorities, unless it is perfect, and I pray that it is, to jump from disclaimed to unqualified in one leap would be a miracle. It is more likely it's disclaimed to qualified to maybe qualified on cash flow, maybe disclaimed to qualified to then qualified accounts. That is the process. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Clive.
The aim is, by the point of going to LGR, to the North Authority, the accounts should be unqualified. That is the planned trajectory. And if the government would say that is what they're aiming for, okay, they're trying to get as many local authorities clean for March 28. So when they go jump over the vesting day, that will then be a clean set of accounts. Do you want to add anything, Helen?
Helen?
If I may, so we've talked quite a lot about the category that you currently find yourselves in, which is category D. I need to be really clear that category D is the language that MHCLG have used. This is their language, the A's, B's, the C's. That is their language. But category D talks about, do I, as your external auditor, do I think, based on what I know now, you can build back assurance for that magical date, which is LGR. And the category D assessment is me saying, no, I don't think you can, based on what I know. And if you look on, I think it's page 11 of the report, you'll see those nice little tables with the greens and the ambers and the reds, which is the progression through, or the potential progression through, in terms of the opinions. And you will notice on there that the area I am most concerned about that remains red across those 3 years is the reserves. So I think that we can start to move through rebuilding assurance on your property, plant and equipment, because we've already got a bit of a track record on that. We already know what the valuation cycle is. If things go as we anticipate them going, we can move through that. Similarly, on pensions, you'd have had a full revaluation. So again, that makes that life easier. And other assets and liabilities, again, as time goes on, if we continue to do the in-year transactions, we can start to build back assurance. The area I am most concerned about, and the area that is driving category D, is for all of the reasons that this committee has talked about over the years. There are 2 financial years where there was no audit assurance at all. And if you cast your mind back, particularly to the 23-24 audit, where that new financial system came into place, there were huge parts of that audit that we tried to complete and we couldn't get the necessary evidence to support those transactions. So as part of the build back, I will need to gain some assurance over transactions that have happened in 23-24 and 24-25, because that is what informs that reserves position. Now, my assessment is, if in 23-24, which was current at that time, I struggled to get the evidence I needed to support those transactions. How easy is it going to be for me 2-3 years down the line to say to you at Harborough, well, I need the evidence that supports that transaction? So that, just being really clear and really honest, that is the main sticking point, and that is what is driving that category D. Yes, we can probably get assurance over lots of other things. As Clive said, 25, 26 goes in the way we want, then we can definitely start to build back the assurance. I think for you, the point that is going to be really challenging, and I'm not sat here saying it is impossible, but you need to understand that once we start to build back assurance, we will be looking at some very old transactions. And a lot of it will come down to whether, based on the implementation of the new financial system in that year in particular, do you have the records to support us getting the assurance over those balances, which is what forms your reserves and which is your foundation of the accounts effectively. So I think I'm not contradicting what Clive has said, but that is the really key part for me in terms of how do we get enough assurance over those reserves that are historic and a legacy point of view. So I think that's probably the big message from me that I wanted to draw out as part of that.
Thank you, Helen. That was very clear. Councillor James?
Could I just come back on that, please? So how can we get you that assurance? It's quite a long time ago, isn't it? And so does it come down eventually to having to write something off or to add value somewhere? I mean, I understand exactly where you are with it, but I'm not sure I understand how we get out of that situation without some, I don't know, without some write-off or additional information. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Councillor James. Please turn off the microphone.
So
Helen?
I absolutely understand your point, and I'm going to come back to the fact that you are not the only council in the land that are in category D. There are a number of councils that we're having exactly the same conversation with. Currently, as auditing standards sit, if I, as the external auditor, cannot get assurance that those foundations are in place and right, I have no option other than to give a disclaimed audit opinion. Do we need to find a way out of that? Very possibly, but it will require a change in standards or a different element of legislation to get us out of that, because as the standards are currently written, there isn't a sort of get out of jail free card. We need to make sure, for me professionally, to sign that clean opinion, I need to know and I need to have that assurance. If it is not there, then I can't comfortably give that clean opinion. And I understand the frustrations and I understand the challenges and I understand the difficulties, but we are working within the legislation that we have. There is an argument, and it's a very live argument that's happening about what does that mean in terms of the passage of time? At what point can we say, well, actually, it doesn't matter? So there is an ongoing debate around that. The other thing that's worth having an eye on, and it's a conversation that we've had at other similar authorities, is, we've talked about LGR, we've talked about you will cease to exist at a point in time and you will become part of a much larger authority. At that point, your balances, everybody else's balances, will come together to form part of that larger authority. That will be the point where an assessment will need to be made about how material are the issues that are carrying forward as part of that larger authority. So is that a problem or is that not a problem? So that will start to be the assessments that's made. But part of what is driving this and this work that we've been asked to do by MHCLG is about MHCLG doing that gathering exercise to work out how many people are in a disclaimed opinion? How many people do auditors genuinely think can get back? How many people might need a different solution? And what do we do about that? So this is what I would say is part of that first sort of gathering exercise. From an audit perspective, we're really focused on sorting, doing 25, 26. That gives us a much more solid base to build off. So I know that's probably not potentially answering the question, but that's broadly where we're going.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Any other comments to make? Can I just ask, are members generally in agreement and have enough assurance from what you've heard so far? It's not a position we wish to be in, but do you have assurance that there's going to be a, I'm trying to think of your word, build back, and the accounts will come into a much more assured position in time? I'm not going to put a limit on that. I'm just going to say in time. Nods of head. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just on the statement. I'm okay for you to sign the statement.
And you're happy for me to sign the statement of accounts?
No, the build back, the assurance statement.
Oh, the assurance statement. Okay. Yeah. Are you happy with the assurance statement to be signed? Thank you. I want that repeated, Councillor Bateman.
I said it with your name on it, not mine.
Through you, Chair.
Yes.
No, absolutely not. Councillor Bremner is signed as chair for everybody. Is that fair? Is that fair?
On your behalf.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. That's a good clarity for the public if they're watching. Over to Rachel for the internal audit progress and performance update. And Rachel Ashley Cont, at least until Saturday, is the Chief Internal Auditor. The recommendation to reflect on is that the committee considers the internal audit progress report, Appendix A, and overdue recommendations, Appendix B, and comments as necessary and as you feel. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our regular report. So I bring one of these reports to each meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee, and it provides the members of the committee with an update on internal audit activity. So everything that we've been working on since the last committee meeting. So the report before you this evening provides an update on any reports that have been finalised, which are summarised for you in section 3. And it also provides you with a copy of the internal audit plan for the 26-27 financial year, which is from page 61 of your pack this evening, which provides each of the audits it will be delivering in 26-27 and the status of each of those at the time of reporting. So we are making progress on delivery of all of the Q1 and starting on Q2 assignments from the year, and I will report back to you throughout the year as these are finalised on the outcomes of each of those. So the 3 reports that have been finalised since the last meeting, which are set out in section 3, were all audits from the 25-26 internal audit plan. So they're also mentioned in my next agenda item of the annual report, but they're included here for you to have that full detail of the executive summaries of each of the audits, so you can understand the basis for the assurance opinions that have been given. So just briefly, so from page 58 of your pack, page 4 of the appendix, section 3 audit findings sets out the first report was around preparedness for changes in waste legislation. So this was very much a review of the council's project management arrangements around preparation for the changes in requirements around waste, which were due to come into place from the 31st of March. So we have given a good level of assurance on the control environment and the compliance based on the performance and the project management arrangements that we saw across the project that was delivering this and the governance arrangements in terms of the reporting. We did still give a medium organisational impact, primarily because of the council has requested a delayed implementation date of November 2026 at the time of the audit, and that had not been formally approved with DEFRA at the time of audit. So it just posed as a risk in terms of the council at that point, but actually in terms of the project management and governance, we've given a good level of assurance. The next related to the housing strategy. So this is a document that was approved in 2024 and covers the period 24 to 29. So whilst there is a strategy in place, we've only been able to give a limited assurance of the control environment because what we found that there was no clear allocation of responsibility for delivery of this strategy and no clear governance arrangements around overseeing how that was being delivered. We would have expected to see a detailed delivery plan to support the delivery of that strategy and that for that to then be monitored effectively, and that mechanism was not in place. So we have given limited assurance on that basis. We have given a moderate assurance on compliance because despite the lack of those governance arrangements and the reporting we're expected to see, there has been some progress in some of the areas based on wider work across the council in relating to housing. So we have given that moderate assurance opinion, but we've made a number of recommendations around formalising the delivery of that strategy going forward, and we've given a medium organisational impact overall. The third report related to procurement compliance, and this is an audit that we do on an annual basis. So we are looking at compliance with the Council's contract procedure rules and also the Procurement Act 2023 requirements. So members will note that we have given a red rating across the board on the audit for the testing that we performed at that time of this audit. So we have given limited assurance on the control environment on the basis that the Council's contract procedure rules and statement of recommended practice, in which is forms the way that the Council delivers its procurement work, had not been updated in line with the Procurement Act 2023, which was actually a recommendation from the previous year's audit. So we didn't actually then perform all of the compliance testing because there wasn't really much point testing the compliance if the actual procedures themselves were not fit for purpose. We've also identified a number of gaps in the performance in terms of procurement compliance in the areas that we did test when we looked at interest on the contract register, for example, and compared that with an analysis of expenditure. And we also noted that all of the recommendations from the previous year's procurement audit remained open and unimplemented, hence the issues that had arisen this year. So we have given our lowest assurance rating in terms of limited and high on those elements. I know that there is an update from officers on this, and we have been advised of progress that's been made in relation to the actions, and I'm sure that officers will be happy to provide an update and any further context that you need on that as well. So also within the report is an update on implementation of actions arising from audits. So if we identify any areas for improvement or a gap in compliance, we make a recommendation and management will agree the action generally. Table 2 on page 65 of the pack provides you with an overview of the implementation of those recommendations that we've made and agreed with officers. So members will note a significant improvement in terms of the number of overdue actions and a high implementation rate for this period, which is really pleasing to see. We also had a number of actions, which I've mentioned within the report, relating to partnerships that were closed on the basis they had been superseded. So I have noted that for your information, but this provides you with an overview of those that remain overdue. For further information, the committee also Appendix B to the papers from page 67 of your pack, you have a breakdown of all of those overdue actions that were either high or medium priority. And in the final column is the latest update we've received from officers. So that just gives you a little bit more insight into each of those actions. So we will continue to follow those up and report back to you at each meeting. And I think, Chair, I think that's a walkthrough of the main elements of the report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Section 151 would just like to give some more context as well.
Through you, Chair. So in respect of the two audit reports that had read conclusions, so I have liaised with the respective officers and they have given me an update, which I'll refer back to you. So regarding to the housing report, the high recommendation that was outstanding is in respect of the delivery of the housing strategy. The response I've had back says they're working. There is this housing strategy. There is the process, the internal process that they've got. They are formalising that into a procedure, and that will be implemented by September. Okay. In respect of procurement, Liz Elliott, the Deputy Chief Exec, would have been here tonight, but unfortunately she had a personal matter she had to go and deal with, so she couldn't be here. But she has sent me a statement. I will read out what her statement says. So it says, members will rightly note that the procurement compliance audit identified important weaknesses, particularly around the conduct register, clarity of responsibilities, and the need to update our procurement framework for the Procurement Act 2023. I want to reassure the committee that these findings have been taken seriously. There has been significant pressure on the legal services team, a change in the management and a heavy reliance on interim arrangements which have impacted on capacity to deliver the recommendations. However, a new head of legal started at the beginning of June and has already taken his recommendations forwards at pace. There is still a capacity issue in the team, but it's being managed in the short term and will be fully addressed in the future budget setting and service planning for the coming year. Since the audit was undertaken, revised contract procedure rules have been approved by Council and now implemented. A new head of legal services is in post and is taking ownership of the main procurement governance actions. We've also strengthened corporate oversight of outstanding audit recommendations so that actions are not simply reported as open, but are actively managed through to completion and evidenced closure. The procurement recommendations remain an important governance issue, but there has been clear progress. The most significant framework action, approval and implementation of revised contract procedures, has now been completed. The focus will now be on embedding the new arrangements, completing the contract register review and ensuring all actions are evidenced to internal so that recommendations can be closed with confidence. There remains work to do, particularly on the retrospective contract register cleanup. However, the governance framework is now stronger than it was at the point of audit. Ownership is clearer and the remaining actions are being progressed through the internal audit follow-up process. So if anybody has any questions on that, please let me know.
Councillor Foreman?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a few questions, mostly on the audit findings. So on the waste changes to waste legislation, so you noted that it was medium because we delayed it to November, but I believe now it's been delayed further, hasn't it? Does that change anything, or is it because that happened after your audit? Is that by the by? I don't know if you want to answer each question as I go on.
Through you, Chair. Yes, so I think there was a risk of that at the time of the audit, so we were aware that may slip further, hence the risk rating that we've given. So even with the initial timeframe that was given, that hadn't been formally agreed. So again, we just need to ensure that we're being clear with DEFRA about the expectations there. So that is the basis for that rating.
Thank you. Yeah, my second question, so on the housing strategy, I suppose, yeah, I was quite disappointed reading all the internal findings actually to the housing strategy. I don't see how this has happened really, I suppose is what I'm asking, because surely there was a delivery plan and we've had a housing strategy and usually it's just like a rolling process. So how did it happen that suddenly there's not a delivery plan, and what's everyone been doing, just like aimlessly going along without a plan? If anyone can answer that.
Through Chair. So there was a revised housing strategy, and it has been managed, but it's been managed between officers. It wasn't documented. There was no process written down. There's been active reporting to directors and so on, but it was that so you can see the governance process. That's what is now being fully documented and will be done by September.
Thanks. Yeah, and then just on the procurement, yeah, I was a bit disappointed with this one as well. I mean, I've highlighted on here all the negative things, and it's just a page full of highlights. Really, I suppose it's just a bit scary almost, because procurement and all the money that's in this, that's where things become corrupt, And I understand what you're saying about capacity issue, and there was a new head of legal. I know you said that we had trouble recruiting to that. I don't know if I have a question as much as our lessons learned from this. Yeah, it's just a bit worrying, I suppose, is my point.
Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Yeah, Clyde.
Yeah, so we have to sort of distill out. So procurements themselves and ensuring value for money, we follow the process. Okay, it is effectively the documentation of that is where it's gone awry. That's right. So if we need to go for 3 quotes, go for 3 quotes. If we need to go for a full tender specification, we've gone for full tender specification. but it's the admin after that. That sort of makes sense. That where it's slipped, and it's also so you can take some reassurance from that first bit that we have made sure that we've got value for money, and so on and so on. Okay, even for example, getting interim staff in. This is always an issue that I have had active debates with Rachel about on interim staff. I would always go out for 3 or 4 CVs and review those CVs, and you would try from different agents to make sure you've got value for money. Okay, we now have a procedure that's been approved by council to deal with interim staff. The other bit was the new procurement code, and that hadn't been updated as quickly as it should have been. It is now, and that is now done. Okay.
Yeah.
I think as well, and ultimately internal audit will look and find, and as Rachel explained, they consciously decided in some areas they couldn't undertake their full work. But what I have seen is that although we hadn't updated, for example, for the Procurement Act in terms of our procedure rules, actually on the ground, that was the rules that we were using. And a great example of that is the waste contract, where that was very transparently dealt with through Cabinet with a full procurement report to demonstrate how it was going to comply with the Procurement Act. So even though it wasn't necessarily done and documented in the right ways, people were trying to do the right things to be compliant with the rules that they are expected to follow. And hopefully internal audit will come back and be able to see the progress that we are trying to make.
Thank you. Thanks, Leah. Councillor James?
I'm not familiar with the housing strategy, and I'm coming late to the meeting, so apologies if it's in here. But what are we talking about with the housing strategy? Are we talking about homeless people? Are we talking about social housing? Are we talking about the various mechanisms for affordable housing, self-build housing, market rate housing? What is our strategy encompassing, please?
Yeah,
I don't profess to be an expert on housing in any way, shape or form, but the housing strategy does look at our responsibilities as a district council in respect of primarily private sector housing. And so it looks at how we deal with homelessness and temporary accommodation and matters such as that. And it was revised about 2 years ago, I think it was probably 2.5 years ago. And this audit is looking at the governance around the implementation of that strategy. Now, do remember though, members, that housing strategy has made some great inroads into how the authority is achieving value for money. So two things to bring to your attention. One is the fact that as part of that strategy, we have been buying houses to help alleviate the cost of temporary accommodation in hotels and so on. So yes, we may have capital outlay for to buy a house, but the cost of that when it's broken down and annualized against the night cost of putting somebody into a hotel, it is a fraction of what it would cost in a hotel. And similarly, a contract is currently being procured to enable us to go to a particular hotel deliverer, whatever you want to call them, trying to be a bit neutral here. So we, instead of going to a hotel and taking a day rate or a night rate for a particular homeless person for a period of time, we will have a contract that acts a bit like a framework. So we'll have an agreement with said hotel that they will give so many nights for so many pounds. Okay. So, and that all feeds through how the strategy works. But it's the documentation and governance of that is important for this audit. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Foreman?
Thank you. Just a quick one. So, just for my knowledge, then when you put a medium or a risk, a red risk, do those then get added onto the actions that what Appendix B is overdue actions, but it becomes an action, does it? To do it, like, sorry, what I'm trying to say is like the housing strategy is to be implemented by September. Will someone be following up on that as an action?
Yes, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, so the ratings reflect the overall assurance. Within the report, there will also be an action plan. So depending on the issues, it might be one really big issue that needs one action, or it might be a number of different actions, some high, some medium. Those are all followed up on a monthly basis with officers, and that as soon as they then become overdue, if they do, they then feature on your table that's in the agenda as well.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Bateman?
Just a quick comment, really. It's nice to see 31 outstanding tasks have been cleared off. So, you know, good news travels slowly, but it's nice to see, because some of them have been languishing. It has been something that I've noticed over time on this committee, that some of these outstanding actions do languish for a while, and it's nice to see 31 have gone. And I'm grateful to Clive for his reassurance in relation to the procurement aspect, that that's going to come down from red and hopefully go to green at some point and get a good rating from our internal auditors. I noticed that in January, the internal audit's going to be checking compliance with Procurement Act 23. So hopefully we'll get a decent feedback, and the actions that Clive has raised will be implemented sooner rather than later. But yes, congratulations to the officers for clearing so many off since the last meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Thank you, Rachel. Any other comments on that report? No. If we move on to Rachel again, internal audit annual report and opinion, pages 73 to 96.
Thank you,
So,
Chair.
you, Rachel.
So on an annual basis, as your Chief Internal Auditor, I'm required to provide you with an assurance opinion. So that should inform your annual governance statement, which forms part of your statement of accounts. And that opinion should be over the Council's overall governance, risk and control framework. So that opinion is primarily based on the work that my team and I have delivered during that financial year. So we design the audit plan, as you've seen today, that's on the progress report, is designed to inform that opinion if we are delivering all of that work. So this provides you with the assurance opinion for 25-26, and the opinion is provided for you in the Appendix A, page 79 of your pack. So the opinion I have given this year does reflect the assurance ratings that have been given across the year. So as we've mentioned this evening already, there have been some areas of limited assurance. I have also had some limitations on the ability to give a full assurance opinion this year on the basis that we were unable to complete the key financial systems audit this year, which is an annual audit that we perform on key financial controls within the council's financial systems. So I'm not able to give you an assurance opinion on those for 25-26 until that work is completed. The work is ongoing. We have now been able to start the testing on the treasury management element of the audit, but I cannot give you an opinion as part of this report, so I have to be very clear on what I can and cannot give you an opinion on. So there is a bit more detail within the table from page 79 to page 80 on the opinion that sets that out in more detail. So overall, I have given a moderate assurance with areas of limited assurance, which members will note from previous years I have generally given a moderate assurance opinion. You have had more limited assurance reports this year than you have in any of the previous years, and I have had to reflect that here. And there have also been areas, as I say, that I've given those limitations on. So I've also then given you some commentary on risk management, internal control, and the reflection on the key risks on the council's risk register during the period and how the audit coverage has given you some assurance in those areas. The rest of the report then sets out the basis for that assurance opinion. So on page 5, page 81 of the pack, there are some general assurances around our compliance with the standards and our unrestricted access to systems where we performed audit work. Table 1 on page 6, page 82 of the pack provides a high-level summary of the assurance opinions that we've given throughout the year, which members there will note that 30% of the opinions have been of limited assurance, which is quite a high proportion. And the comparative from the previous year is given for you in black at the bottom of that table. The definitions, just to remind members on the definitions of the assurance ratings that we refer to, are provided in table 2. And table 3 then provides you with a detailed breakdown of all of the audits that we completed. So the majority of these were reported to you throughout the year as part of my progress reporting. Anything that was finalised since the last meeting was on the agenda item already discussed today. And as you can see there is that one gap around the key financial systems, as I mentioned. One of the other things that informs my opinion is the implementation of actions. So we've talked again about this already as part of the progress report. On table 4, page 85 of the pack is a snapshot of the position as at the 31st of March 2026. So this was before some of those actions that are included in the progress report had been implemented. And clearly we've already looked at the updated position, so I don't intend to comment on that further. Other sources of assurance that have informed my opinion include the assurance received from the internal auditors of the Revenues and Benefits Partnership, which is reflected in section 4.9 of the report. And then from section 5 onwards, we summarise the work of the internal audit team ourselves against our own standards and our delivery of the audit plan. So table 5 provides the feedback that we've received on the quality of the internal audit work. So I'm really proud and very pleased to present the findings there, which have been very positive. And then we've also reflected on our compliance with the standards from section 5.6. In line with that as well, members may recall that we provided you with a full copy of the external quality assessment that was completed for the Internal Audit Service in 2025. For completeness for this report, I wanted to give you assurance over the actions that have been taken in relation to that. So the rating we received was the highest rating available of generally conforms with the standards, but we still had some actions that we wanted to further improve and develop upon. So you have updates on each of those in Appendix 2, sorry, from page 93 of the pack. So, as I say, this should be a key source of assurance for the committee. It should inform your annual governance statement, and it brings together all of the work of internal audit during the financial year. So I'm happy to take any questions from members on the content. Thank you.
Questions, members? No? Clean bill of health. I just would like to ask Helen, as you've presented your paperwork, if you wish to leave, you're free to do so if you've got to get anywhere more important than this committee.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. We're now on page 97 to 114, item 8, and it's with Leah, Head of Democratic Services Elections Monitoring Officer, to introduce the report. This recommendation is that the counter-fraud, corruption and bribery strategy be adopted. So at the due time, I'll ask for a proposer and a seconder, but not just yet. We'll discuss it first. So over to you, Leah.
Thank you, Chair. It is some time since the Council last reviewed its suite of counter-fraud, corruption and bribery and associated documents. You might remember, I think it was back in January, this committee also received the money laundering strategy as well. So this is effectively the final document in a set of reviews that we've been doing. Previously, the Council had a counter-fraud strategy and a bribery strategy, but actually they contained a huge amount of overlap. And the previous documents were also quite verbose in the way that it took time explaining things. And when reviewing it this time, as well as trying to ensure some of the language and some of the way it's structured is more compliant with good practice identified in the past few years, it also tries to focus more on specific action and what the Council specifically does to manage its risks of fraud, corruption, and bribery, rather than necessarily just explaining things in detail. If this is agreed tonight, then the plan is that we would do more work to review our fraud risk, embed processes around that, look at how we need to respond to the risk, the level of resourcing and so on, but also look at that, of course, in the LGR context as we would be expected to do. So hopefully you will feel able to approve this tonight, and then we can move into implementing.
Thank you. Over to you, members. I'll give you some time to reflect on this because I don't want to rush this paper as you're adopting it. Chicken. Councillor Bateman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. For me, it's a very good report, a good policy. Covers everything that I can think of with regards to fraud, bribery, and the rest of the items that are in here. Yeah, I mean, it puts us all under an obligation to make sure that the council is protected from that kind of crime. So personally, I'm more than happy with it and happy to move it
Thank you.
for recommendation.
Second, you notice who seconded it?
Yeah, Councillor James.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you very much. You have your fraud. And could you indicate your support for this? Thank you very much. And continuing with Leah, for the committee to note the annual report on information governance.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually one of our outstanding audit recommendations that we're resolving by preparing this report for you today. This is the first time we've done an annual report on information governance. And so it's been a journey of trying to understand what information you might find interesting or useful as a committee, to be able to assure yourselves that we are trying to do the right things in terms of the way that we manage personal data and information requests in the council. So as you'll see, I've put quite a wide range of data into the report, lots of facts and figures, and also some explanations about what our responsibilities are and how we try to manage our information governance practice and approach. I think actually there's a really interesting bit at the end in the report, which is that council has supported a budget of work to really hone in and focus on information governance over the past year. And I think the budget for that looks quite large, albeit it's combined with some other work too. But it's a real fundamental for local government reorganisation to get our data into the best place it can be. It will also help resolve a couple of the other long outstanding audit recommendations as well. So I'm looking forward to those ones coming off the list. But it's a really, really important piece of work. We have now started that. It will take time. We do have to go through lots of records and data and information and really think about, do we need this? How are we going to retain it? How do we ensure that in future years people will be able to access that when they need to? Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, members? Yeah, Councillor Foreman.
Thanks. Yeah, just to say that it's really informative and well set out. Thank you. Find it easy to read. Thanks for that.
Everybody happy? Councillor Bateman?
Well, firstly, I'm amazed how many requests we get. I'm absolutely stunned that there's so many come in. I had no idea that there were so many. I'd be interested to know, and you may not be able to tell me, and if it's something you can find out later, it'd be interesting to know how many FOI requests come in from members over the total of 735. Just out of interest, just an interesting concept of how many come in from members, but you don't have to answer now, Leah, if you don't know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think she's thinking about it. We'll go to Councillor James while she thinks about it. You raised your hand. Oh, it's very clear. Councillor Piper.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Bateman beat me to the post on the surprise of the number of requests. I did find out. But my question would be, how much does it actually cost to answer all of these? It must be a
sum.
Well, yes, it would be a sum, but it must be a sizable sum, something which would appear not just in the small print, as it were, as a separate item.
Thank you. Leah, possibly Clive, I don't know.
Starting with Councillor Bateman's question, it would take me a little bit of digging because we put the individual's name, we don't state whether or not they're a councillor. Oh, actually, we do have a councillor column, but I'm just scrolling through. Sorry, I've just spotted it. I'm scrolling through for the past year, and we haven't had any from councillors in the past year, but we have had previous years where there's been a few. We tend to encourage councillors to use the member inquiries process because you've got an enhanced right to know as councillors, so you might be able to get more information than we can give you through an FOI request if you use the member inquiries inbox, and we do monitor that and have stats on that. I haven't reported here because we monitor that alongside complaints, and that goes as part of corporate performance indicators to the scrutiny panel. In terms of Councillor Piper's question, I'll confess we don't keep timesheets and records on how long it takes to respond to each request, partly because, as you'll see, it is quite onerous responding to this number of requests, and then trying to add timesheets onto it would add to that. If we think a request is going to be more than 18 hours work, we can refuse it on that basis. But I think any request where an officer comes back saying that's going to be really onerous and heavy on it, what we then encourage is we'll go back to the requester and say, look, can you narrow this down a bit? Because it's quite a lot of information. It's going to take a lot of time to gather. And so please, can you try and focus on specific information? But you are right. It does take quite a lot of resource in the organisation to respond to FOIs, EIR requests, data protection, subject access, and it's really difficult because we have a legal obligation and a lot of the time we can't say no.
Thank you, Leah. Any other member questions? No, that's duly noted. Thank you. We move on to item 10, update on standards activity, which will be interesting. Leah Muckleborough, Head of Democratic Services Elections Monitoring Officer. Introduce, that's a long heading.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a long job title. Actually, it's a slightly different report I'm providing to you this time. So when I provided my report in January, there was quite a lot of cases that I'd inherited as monitoring officer that were in progress, unresolved at that time, including a few that were quite long outstanding. And I reported those long, more challenging ones to the Audit and Standards Committee in April as part of a separate report. And I keep, every time I say this, I have to tap the desk, touch wood. We haven't had any complaints in relation to Harbour District councillors or parish councillors since my last report. There have been no new complaints. And I think that's something we really need to celebrate because we have a duty as a council to uphold high standards of conduct. And the fact that, you know, things are going really well on this front is very unusual. I've not seen, I think in 15 years of being a monitoring officer, not seen a spell like this. So it's something to really celebrate as a council. Clearly, there have been one or two cases that have been more contentious and difficult, and I don't intend to rehearse those because I think we are now at a point where we've been able to draw a conclusion on all of those matters, and they are closed. One frustrating development we've had since the last report is the government's position in terms of reform to the system. So we were fully expecting that probably from Christmas into, well, probably over the winter, we'd be seeing emerging new legislation about standards regime. It looks very, very unlikely now that this will be coming forward in the near future. The timeframes are very unclear. I get regular updates on it, but it's not looking very, very positive at this stage. And what's really frustrating is it continues to be more evidence emerging about some of the challenges that this is creating. And I mentioned some recent work that was done as senior council officers saying that vast majority of experience poor behaviour. There's been various other studies amongst councillors to show that they've also experienced poor behaviour from their colleagues, but also from residents. And I think it is really frustrating the system isn't being reformed as we might want and wish, but we'll keep pressing for that as a sector to come forward.
Just from the chair's point of view, I think it's very important that the government do look at that because there needs to be a more gradation of sanction and perhaps stiffer sanction as well within that framework. Any other comments from members? No, they're all very happy. Thank you. Thanks, Leah. As there's no urgent business in the time of this meeting, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody.